Great. So welcome to our Dolls 201 panel. This is a GemCon. Rachel's been to GemCon before, but virtual GemCon exclusive. It's already tomorrow where she is. How's tomorrow, by the way? Is tomorrow better than today?
Well, it's sunny here, so it might be.
Okay.
It's probably nighttime for you guys almost.
Great. Coming to us from the future is Rachel in Australia, the original Gem Girl. She, before Integrity came along, ever since Integrity came along, included if you wanted a graphics doll, you wanted a Synergy doll that looked like the cartoon, you wanted a character Astral, you wanted a better version of Stormer or Gem or Kimber, Gem Girl was the place to go. They were worth the price. And I finally got my first Gem Girl. And I don't need any more Stormers. Stormer's my favorite mold. I love Stormer, Shayna molds. Like that face is the best one to me. And I didn't need any more of them, but I saw a Gem Girl one for a good price and I had to have one. So this is my Gem Girl Stormer. She has the cartoon hair. I mean, I'm sorry, the storybook, the golden book hair, like the kind of brighter blue, big afro from like the books, like the golden books, not from the show. And she has a custom resin microphone, Misfits bracelets in purple, matching shoes. She's very precious to me. You can see how great her makeup is and just how vibrant that is, that little purple flower in her hair. And I just want to show you a couple other, well, first of all, I was so excited to get the thing and I still have it. It's from 2013, Gem Girl, the box that she came in when she came to me and all these stamps from Australia and how long it took to get here. I was very happy to have it. And it's just to show you guys how precious it is to me to have a Gem Girl Stormer and just to kind of talk a little bit. I hope you guys will talk about this. She has a great program plan. This is like original Stormer, right? And it's a very different face than what Gem Girl does with the same doll, the same kind of sculpt. And this is another Stormer. This is why I don't need more Stormers. Another Stormer I got, it's got a whole different vibe going on too. Kind of more realistic like thing, but I think it's good as well. So we're going to talk about some of that today anyway. But that being said, thank you all for coming to this session. And I'm going to turn it over to Nicola, GemCon alum, to get us started.
Right, hello everybody. We're going to have a bit of an international flair today because I'm coming to you from Yorkshire in the UK. So I'm a little bit ahead. I think it's about 10:30 now, I think. Let me just check. Yeah, it's 10:30. So I don't know if anyone else is from my part of the world signing in. I think there's a couple of you I've seen. And I met a few of you at GemCon in 2019. So it's nice to see familiar faces because it's the first time that I've done one of these. And I'm really, really glad that my first one is introducing one of my heroes because I've got into customizing a couple of years ago, so I'm still very much a novice, sort of Padawan, and I think the Jedi Master in the Gem world is Gem Girl. Welcome, Rachel, to our panel. Everyone give her.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for all the hard work you guys have been putting into GemCon, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here from the future. So I'm broadcasting from Australia, so it's really exciting to have people from different parts of the globe and bringing GemCon together for everyone to watch, anybody and everybody. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. So I have been customizing for other people since 2004 and started doing fashions. And then I got into doing the face paints and doing the hair. And then over time, I got into making accessories because I needed shoes, I needed microphones, instruments, and all the other, things that the dolls need. So yeah, Gem has been a childhood passion of mine. I love watching the show as a kid and everything about it. So that's a little bit about what Gem means to me and about my customizing. So today, first of all, I'm showing some dolls that are customized, some that are partly customized. I wanted to have a few little surprises, a few things that hopefully some people haven't seen, and also like a few things that have been like reproductions of some of the prototypes. So yeah, hope you enjoy the eye candy by me. And I'm going to start with showing some sewing techniques of how to make clothes for Gem dolls. So we're going to start with something. And first of all,
Can we just add, if anyone's got any questions while we're going along, if you want to just put them in the chat, we can sort of ask them as we're going along, or there will be some time at the end to ask sort of any more extensive general questions.
Absolutely, yeah. Feel free to ask things along the way. If you want, I don't know, want to ask some interesting, fun, you know, share a couple of gem tidbits, go for it. So I'm going to start with showing how to make a basic skirt. So this is for a beginner or, you know, somebody that wants just a different tip of how to do something. So this is like what you do first. You can cut out a piece of fabric. It's just a rectangle. So, and there's different ways of patterning. You can, you know, pattern properly with paper and measure everything, or you can do the simple method by just, you know, cutting out your fabric and just like, you know, going around the doll and getting it till it's right. So we'll just pretend this is not sewn. And so, you know, you sort of got to go around the doll, have enough of like an allowance at the back so that you can sew it. And the beauty of that, like you can just cut it more until it, you know, it fits. You can even go bigger and then like adjust it as you finish. There's so many ways to get started. So many people say, oh, I want to start making dolls fashions. I don't know where to start. Just start anywhere. That's where it all begins. And as I say, practice makes perfect.
We've just got a question which kind of relates to what you've got in your hand there. Have you got any tips for doing the tiny seams? Because I think a lot of us have similar problems where they eat it. Is it the fabric?
Yes, and that's one of the biggest problems that happens. So when you're sewing on the sewing machine, when you get to we'll say the end, that's where the machine sort of eats the fabric. And that's where a lot of people have problems. And such tiny things are so different to sewing clothes for humans or linen and, you know, all that sort of thing. So my tip is when you're actually getting to the end of the fabric, so let's say it's right on the corner, what you need to do is actually use the hand wheel. So instead of using the pedal, you can actually control it, and then you can start to see where the fabric is getting eaten by the sewing machine. So that is one of my, like, that's a really good tip. It sounds really simple, but it is quite effective. And also I'm going to show you another seam about a little trick about doing back-tacking so that it doesn't pull apart. So let's say I'm starting with a skirt. So this is a skirt and you cut out like a rectangle, just wrap it around the doll, get it like the size you want. The first thing I usually do is do the edge. So you just sew along the edge of the bottom of the skirt. And this is an elastic waisted skirt. And when I'm sewing elastic to the top, I put it on a wide stitch, like a 4 on the stitch length, because the tighter you go, the harder it is to sew your elastic to your fabric. So that's like a really important tip. And it all takes time until you get like used to it, but go a larger stitch for your elastics. So like a size 4 and then about a size 3 on your seams. Then when you've done those 2 steps, you can check it with your dolls. So this is the beauty of like, you can always cut more off. So then you go around your doll, and then if you've gone way too big, all you've got to do is, you know, cut the back off. And then the last thing that you do is, which we haven't done here, but the very, very last thing to do is your seam down the back. So that will be the back of the skirt. And that way, if you have it too big, you can go in further. You can sew it in a few millimeters closer in until it gets right. And you're just testing it on your doll and making sure that it fits. Now, my big tip on how to make sure that your seams don't come apart. So the thing with dolls' clothes is obviously you're taking them on and off, trying them on different dolls. And often the seams come apart at the top and they start to pull apart. So the best thing to do, hopefully everyone can see this, is you start your seam or your back tacking down here. So you start here, you go up, and then you go all the way down, and then you end your back tacking here. So never end it here or here, because that's where it makes a weak point. So that's one of my big tips on making doll's clothes, is to get your back tacking on your seams starting at that point. And then you've got, as you like pull it, it's not going to come undone easily. So that's my tip on making like a little skirt.
So Rachel, I have a question. I'm a total novice with this, but how do you, with the elastic, you stretch it out and you put it on the sewing machine stretched out? Is that, how do you get it to kind of bunch up and stretch out?
So usually, I mean, I cut about, I think it's 10 centimeters, which is 4 inches. So it would be about that wide. And the other thing you can do is get your elastic and test it around the doll's waist as well. And always have a bit of allowance for your, like, because you're going to have a seam at the back. And as you are sewing, you need to stretch that elastic to match the fabric.
Okay,
and that's the beauty of having the larger stitch length, having like a 4 stitch length. That way it just attaches so much easier.
And the fabric itself looks like very forgiving, this fabric that you have. It looks like it's stretchy, the fabric.
Yes, so it's like a lycra fabric.
Awesome. Thank you.
So that is my first tip on making skirts. I'm going to also show a basic jacket. So this is a step-by-step one, and I did actually show this at GemCon 2008. And this also shows, I hope everyone can see this. This also shows, so that's the example of the back tacking. So when you start your seam, you need to make sure it starts from there, it goes along here, and then you go right along, go to the end, come in and back tack it. So that's sort of showing the thread so that you can see where the back tacking ends. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so this is showing how to make a basic jacket. So think Shayna jacket. So this one I'm gonna go through quickly. So you start with a back piece, 2 front pieces, and it's really good patterning off existing gem fashion. So you can put it down, put it on paper, and then draw it onto your fabric, or just cut your fabric around the jacket. That's one way to do it. And then you sew the top seams along the top of the sleeves first. So that's step 1, and then keeping in mind your back tacking starts further in. Then the next step is to do these little cuff ends. So you are sewing the edge of the cuffs first before you finish the sleeve, because to get sewing in a tiny little sleeve like that last is a nightmare. So you don't want to do that. So you start sewing this so you've got a nice flat surface to do your cuff ends. Then the next step is to sew the undersides of the sleeves. It goes right down to the bottom of the jacket. And again, your back tacking, you always start further in. And it's starting to take form. And then the next step is to do the fronts of the bodice, or the fronts of the jacket. And with that, what you do is you start from one end and you sew all the way around to the other end. And then you've got one more step to go. Lucky last is to sew the very bottom of the jacket, so your bottom hem. And there's also another tip. You can also snip inside the sleeves to give it like a little bit of movement. I'm just going to skip that step. And then, of course, you turn it around the right way. Can't do this right. And there you have a gem jacket. Makes it sound so easy, doesn't it, everyone?
I was just going to sort of ask a question about the thing that I find difficult, and I'm sure that a lot of people probably do as well. It's when you're sewing around curved edges, so sort of the neck, when you're kind of going around and doing the seam around the inside. Is that just, again, a case of maybe turning by hand rather than going at full speed? Or are there any tricks for that one?
That one does take a bit of practice. I remember at first trying to do like around the edge of the neck area. That I always found hard at first, and because it is so tiny, you know, it's a challenge. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. And before you know it, you think, when was this hard? How did I get to this point? And so yeah, just practice. Also, when you're sewing like around the edges, say, of the neck, sometimes if you stay too close to the edge here, you end up sort of going off track. So it's getting like that, the positioning right. But it's all a practice thing. And the other thing is that's tricky is because you've got seams here, it's hard to get it perfectly straight. Like even this little demo one has a little bit off track, but yeah, it's all a practice thing. And eventually, yeah, the more you do it, then you realize over time, no, when was this hard? I forgot when this was hard. Now I'm doing it fine. Yeah. So,
cool. It's looking really good. I expect to see a lot of people practicing this, and we're going to want to see pictures on the Facebook group.
Yes. See some examples of what people have put together. Yes, definitely. So, does anyone have any quick questions on like the sewing before I get to the painting?
I have a question in the chat from Raven. Raven, you can come off mute and ask it, or I can ask it on your behalf, whichever you prefer. I will ask it because she may be doing other things, but
I'm here.
You're there. Okay, great.
I'm sorry about that. My camera was off. The auto default is off, so I had to turn it back on. But hi, Rachel.
Hi, Raven. How are you?
Long time ago. And my dolls are still excited about wearing the things that I bought from you a long time ago.
Oh, wonderful.
The question I have for you was, it's a multi-layered question. First part, is there any doll outfit that you saw that you decided that you wanted to make, but you thought it was too difficult, but you tried it anyway and found that it was easier than you thought?
Sometimes there's some outfits that I find hard, and then I'll find an easier way to do it. So say like the gold fashion with the pink, putting it all together, where it has like the ruffles on the sleeves. There's a really particular way how that goes together. And every time I make that, I think I've got this. And every time I go to do it, I'm like, this is really hard. It's just, and ruffles are really hard to get right. They have to look spot on, or they just look a mess. So there's some that I think, oh no, I've got this. And each time I go, this is really hard. And then other times where I've made things where you think it's hard, and then the more you do it, it gets easier. Or the beauty of that is you find a better way. So there's even a pizzazz up there wearing I've made a reproduction of one of the prototype fashions. And with the ruffles actually went a particular way, and I just couldn't get the look of it right. And I was making it the way that I believe the originals would have been made, because I looked at the pictures and a friend helped me. And then I decided, no, I need to tweak the way I do it to make it look better. And to me, it's all about what is presented the best. So if you see like a pattern to something, or someone says, oh, you should do it like this, but you think, no, I've got a better way, go with the better way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always find if there's an easier, more presentable way of doing it, then that'll actually make the process more fun as well.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
One more question from Jessica. Jessica, do you want to come up and ask it, or I can ask it on your behalf?
Sure. Hi, Rachel.
Oh, hi, Jessica. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good.
So I was wondering if you want to make a fashion where there's nothing existing in the gem line that sort of looks like it or has the shape of it that you could kind of copy or like hack a pattern out of. What is the best way to do that? Like, how do you come up with an idea on how to do that?
Well, I'm really quite into pattern making, so I suppose I've got probably an easier answer that works for me. But I always say start simple. Like sometimes people will start way too difficult. They'll go for a very detailed way of doing something. And I'm sure everyone probably relates to this. You start something and it's very complex. And then you actually scale it back and go, oh, I could have done this a much simpler way. Yeah, I can. And so start simple, and I always add things to things. So if something looks really hard, you can always like add pieces to the design. So, I mean, and then if you find a better way, you can, tweak it. But that's the best way I can think of answering that. And I hope that helps.
Great, that's all for now, I think. Oh wait, here we go. Christine's asking a question. Is there a custom doll you've enjoyed making more than any other, like a specific custom doll, signature doll for you that you just love to make, never get tired of?
I think Astral, even though Astral has quite a bit of work involved, whenever it's finished, I feel really good about that doll. So up here we have
that one there. Yeah, it's great.
I've got a couple of versions of Astral, because you've got the Toy Fair picture, and then there's one of the prototype ones that was boxed. And yeah, just something about the hair, the jacket, all the details just stands out to me. But also Regine, that's another one that's definitely top on my list, that when it's coming along and I can see her character come out, it feels really good to create.
That's great. Those are the two dolls we saw. We saw a version of them. We knew they were in the production line somewhere, right? They're like, great. We wanted to see them. There's a template, and it's great to bring that thing to life, right? Actually hold the thing we know existed. Nicola, you have a great Astral as well, right? The one that you did has glow in the dark hair.
Well, I was going to say, my Astral kind of goes back to the previous question as well, about how you kind of make things. This is one that I made that I wasn't happy with, because you can kind of see, I don't know if you can kind of see on here, but there's kind of a gold line around here. And when I originally made it, that's where the coat finished, because I totally messed up on making the pattern, and it was really trial and errors. So you can kind of see there's just pieces added on, but once it's on a shelf, nobody knows, it's just got a few extra decorative points. So it's just trial and error, and it's eventually you'll kind of get to a point where you've got something that you're happy with. So, and she was one of my first ones and one of my favorite ones. So yeah. Yeah,
I love that one specifically from your work. And sometimes they'll end up behind another doll anyway eventually. So it's like, who cares, right?
It's good hearing Nicola's experience, because sometimes things don't always go to plan, but then like I'm seeing this and her jacket looks amazing, so you can, adding those things actually adds like a detailed element to them. So
she's kind of, she's not show accurate because of having to add things to hide errors, but I just put rhinestones, and it's like she's in showbiz, so she don't mind. Just answering a question in the chat as well. Yes, there are some limp lizards up there as well.
Lovely.
Yeah, this limp lizards has become a recurring theme of this con for some reason. So have you ever made any limp lizards, Rachael?
I haven't made any limp lizards before. No, that's one group that, I haven't actually had any customers request them. So that's part of the reason, but maybe because they're not as glam, I haven't chosen to create them. But it's always like that. Every character would be amazing, so it's always on the back burner.
You may get some requests after this con, definitely. Feel free to move on to the next segment if you want. I think we're in good shape.
Well, I'm going to show just some quick painting tutorials, and I'm going to start with the starting point of painting, and then I'm also going to start with just adding a different eye color to a doll. So painting doesn't just have to be all the works, you know. You can start simple. That's where it all begins. I mean, there was a point where I started painting and the first paint I did was blotchy and terrible. And it was luckily on a Barbie, not a gem. And then I figured out how to mix my paints right. And the next one was so much better. So everybody has to start somewhere. So don't think it has to be elaborate. So I'm going to first show you, this is an interesting doll because this is actually a rock and curl who I dyed to a nice skin tone to match Shayna's body. And she will be a regime and she's going to be a little different, a little bit more of a darker blue hair and a bit more of a cartoon style regime. And I have created one like this some years ago, so I'm going to recreate another one. And I'm just showing you the face paint. So I've taken all the face paint off. So she looks very interesting and different. And I'm going to just show where you start when you're starting a face paint. So I use paints called acrylic paint. There's a whole heap of different brands. There is, I mean, some brands are really good. There's all types, but anything that says acrylic paint usually does the trick. The only exception is when you're using colors like red or pink or magenta tones. Go a good brand. That is my number one tip, because the cheapy brands of those colors, because red tones, magenta tones tend to bleed the color, they'll end up with like lipstick that they look like they've had on all night. So you don't want that. But there's, I mean, oh look, there's even an Australian brand with the color spelt the Aussie way. There's all sorts. Trying to find something that everybody knows.
Can I just ask, and Tivia has asked in the chat as well, what do you use to dye the skin tone? Because you said that you dyed that one to match Shayna's skin tone.
So I just use a fabric dye and put it very hot, but it's trial and error. I've done some and they get blotches on them. So be prepared to get not the result you want. And I found that I had to dye it darker and let it sit for a few weeks until it got to the color I wanted. So this one originally started out darker, and then in about 2 weeks, it got to the tone that I want. And it was just luck. I did one darker, one a little lighter, and the lighter one looked a little too light, and then this one looked just right. So yeah, it's amazing all the different things you can do to customize. Like, and then I hear things from other people, and I think, like, I've heard where people use like some sort of acetone to dye hard plastic. And I'm like, that's amazing. They add that into the dye, or just, yeah. So there is so many ways of customizing. It's incredible. So I'm going to start with a white acrylic paint and just show you the starts of painting. Now I cut out cereal boxes to use as my palettes. Some people use like a fancy like palette box thing to paint on, but I find this is good because then you can just throw them away when you're done, but there's no right way or wrong way. So what I do, I put my paint on my palette. I also add water. So with acrylic paints, if you don't add water, it will end up very blotchy. So I go about 50-50, and hopefully we can see what's going on here. So there's 1 dollop of water on there. Just put that down there. And then I use a fine paintbrush. I think they're called 000. And then of course you mix the paints. Now when you're painting, a really good tip is to sort of like move your brush on an angle. So I'm twisting my hand as I go. And especially when you're doing fine lines like lashes and detail around the eye, you want that tip of that paintbrush to be as pointy as possible. So there's so many different tips, but that's one that I find really important. But I'm just going to be painting the whites of her eyes to start with, so it doesn't really apply in this situation. Hopefully we can see this as I'm doing this. So it's going to be an interesting way of doing it. So what I'm doing is starting by painting just the whites of the eyes. And I'm probably just going to do one, but we'll see how we go the time. Now I'm doing a very sort of quick version for today. So when you're painting one coat, it's quite watery. So you want, when I paint coats on my dolls, I will sometimes paint like 6 coats of white. So that's how I get my paint smooth. And if I try to do it in 3 coats, I end up with a blotchy result. So multiple coats is the method. And usually I will do this with a lamp, but today we're just gonna do it this way. And if you get to this point, you have started painting dolls. So that's all it takes. Simple white paint, painting the eyeballs of the eyes. And I'm just going to do the teeth as well, so you can kind of see her start to evolve. Hope you guys can see that. And the beauty about when you're painting the whites of the teeth, you can go a little bit over into the lips. It doesn't matter because you're going to do the lips over the top. And when I'm painting coats, often I will go over things like, say I've done the whites of the eyes, the eyeballs, and like say the eyeliner. I will often then like touch up later with the white just to get everything right. But also you can go too far. You can get too like perfectionism over things. And sometimes you just got to kind of go with it, because those things add character as well. Like little imperfections, things that are not perfectly symmetrical do add character to your doll. So don't get too hung up on everything being absolute perfect, because I always say brilliant is good enough. So this is just the first coat and it dries really quick. So I'm just going to do another one over the top. And sometimes when you're painting under a lamp, the lamp can help it dry quickly as well.
Just while you're painting there's just a quick question. Which
Yeah, go for it.
Rick has asked, which face mold would you recommend for a minx?
A which doll?
Yeah.
I prefer the Kimber video mold, but I didn't used to like that mold. So it all depends. I've actually got a doll that is a little bit like a minx that is done from a Darcy doll, and she's a little bit darker skinned, but she's supposed to be sort of minx inspired. So sometimes I'll go in very different directions as well. But I think because there was a prototype that was done with the Kimber mold for minx, that is also why I go with minx. But with go with Kimber mold. But with the Kimber mold, I found it takes time to get the shaping of her eyes right. There's just something about that doll I couldn't warm to at first. And once I figured out little details of how I like to do things, now I absolutely love that mold. So, and everyone will have different like preferences based on what they've painted and what they find from, you know, their experience. So there, one of the eyes is starting to go darker white. Darker white. It's more opaque white. So coats. And there's a really rough example of the next eye. Now for something really fun, and it is really, really good for beginners, I'm going to show changing the eye color, because this will give you instant gratification, and you can feel like you're actually achieving something without having to do the whole painting. So we, for fun, are going to go with green. And when I am mixing paints, always go a little bit lighter than you think. So something I noticed when I first started painting, everything turned out darker. And it must be something to do with, as the paints dry, they tend to look a little dark. I don't know, has anybody else discovered that? Because I find that an issue. And then you get used to it.
I think that's the case with the paints, yeah.
Right. And so whenever I'm painting like a green, I always usually add like a touch of white, but then often I'll add sometimes other colors, like sometimes I'll add like a little touch of blue. It just depends what tone I'm after. So there's the green and the white, and then you've got to add your water. So this is actually going to be a graphics, but I've left her original face paint just so I can show a different eye color, and she will eventually get her face paint removed and then start it from scratch. But it's really fun seeing, sometimes I'll do a reroute and I'll later change the face paint, so then I can see like this doll as a half clash, half graphics, and then she becomes graphics. And sometimes it's the process, like seeing the dolls evolve is part of the fun. So we're just mixing the water, the white and the green together. And so currently she has blue eyes. And hopefully you guys can semi-see this. Oops. And also when you do this, always go like, I usually go a couple of coats, even for this sort of method as well. So that's just one really quick coat. And you can hopefully, hopefully see the difference. I'm going to do, oh, thank you.
Steve, I see that you have a question. Do you want to come off and ask your question while Rachel's working on that?
Go for it.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you.
Thanks
Hi.
for coming on, Rachel. If I can ask, was the mouth of your closed mouth Aja the hardest thing to paint because it's so small?
Sometimes it's actually the teeth that are the hardest. So getting between the teeth and the lips, especially even on this doll, it can be quite hard to get that right. So probably not. And it's actually the lashes. That's one of the things. If I don't get it right, it can look really dodgy. Like it just looks really bad. So I would say between teeth on some dolls and getting the lashes right. That's one of the things that I find the hardest to paint.
You know, with all these paint jobs, you could create a whole new line of characters.
Yes.
Which one is this supposed to be? Is this just an example, or is this supposed to be one of the characters?
So this one, I'm just sort of showing an example of the eye color change. So this doll will actually get a full repaint at some point, but I just wanted to show how you can change the eye color.
Is that supposed to be dance?
It was
So
Clash, right?
She was a Clash, yes. So she was Clash, and she's going to turn into a graphic. So I've actually painted the scalp to become graphics, who has the bright yellow hair. Yeah, and I'm going to show you a quick example also of a doll that is video. So this one, I've just painted the yellow at the very end of her like eyeshadow. And it just adds that little bit more to the doll. Hope everyone can see that, okay? So just little simple things like that stands out different to my other video dolls. So just adding like a bit of eyeshadow change, eye color, you can even just do the lips, and yeah, it gives you a nice custom change to a doll. So it's not just about the whole thing, you know, and you start from there, and then before you know it, you might actually be painting whole dolls.
Do you have any tricks for how to remove the head without breaking the doll or breaking the shaft of the neck?
So I'm going to show you what I use. So when you're moving the head, I put it in absolute boiling water. Do not put your hands in there, and I put rubber gloves on. And I use just a simple screwdriver, your flathead screwdriver, and I pry it up. Do as an example. Say that's on the doll's body. I pry up into the back of the head and try to keep the neck ball into the body. And you keep going, and you get some dolls that will come off easy and some are glued, and I actually end up having to get scissors and trim part of that, the vinyl off, and it stays on the actual neck ball because I can reboil it, put it in again and again and again, and that glue is so hardcore, it's not going anywhere. So sometimes I actually have to get scissors, just really sharp, fine pointed scissors, and cut into it. Okay, so I'm going to also show a quick rerouting, and that will be, okay, so this doll here, which we had out before, she's going to have blue hair. So I'm going to show a few tips on how to put the hair into the head. And the hair, there's a few different sites these days that do sell gem hair, like gem hair. It's nylon hair is what is best for gems, because that's what they used. It's like what they used on the dolls in the 80s. It's the most similar fiber. And there's like dollyhair.com. There's also there's an Australian one. There's quite a few that you can buy from. So
I think we can maybe afterwards put some links on the Facebook group for sort of supplies and things like that, because I think there's probably quite a few places for people depending on where they live in the world.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think the Australian one is Custom Doll Hair AU, and that's where I've been buying from because I can get it quicker. And some of them have they'll have like a slightly different hair fiber texture, but ones that have they classed as nylon hair is the best type, because you can also you can boil curl it, and you can also heat curl it with like a heat tool. And if you use sarin, you can't heat curl it, and it doesn't have the same look as what like the original gem hair had. So
Jake is asking about pre-curled hair. Do you ever buy the hair that's curly to root?
Oh, yes. I go through stages of what I like, but yes, I'm actually preferring that a little bit at the moment because I'm not enjoying the curling process as much. So I sometimes like to mix like my own colors, do so like a blend, but it is really good, and they stay full. And if you want a really good tight curl, yeah, the pre-curled hair, and it takes a little while to get used to using it, but once you get the hang of it, it's quite good.
Awesome,
so
thank you.
I'm going to show you. So when you get the hair, it starts out as it looks. I'm going to show you this yellow one. It looks like this. That's how they package it. Then what I do, I get a little elastic band and I put it around the end, take the twist tie off so that it basically looks like that. And again, there's heaps of different methods of doing this, but this is just what I find works best. On my scissors. And then this will be interesting to show. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. So I get, well, usually I get a little bit thicker amount, but grab a section of hair, cut it off, put that aside. Now what you want to do is, you can look up this information online, but I'll sort of show the basics of how to put the hair in. But I use a tool, it's basically a piece of dowel timber, and it's actually a sewing needle that I've cut the top. and turned it into, basically, it's like a prong. So what's happening, the hair goes into the prongs and goes whoop, into the doll's head. But you can, I'll leave that up for people to like Google hair reroot tools. So then there's a bit of a way to it, but you want to sort of hold the hair a particular way in your, say, left hand. Then you want to grab the little prong and you want a section of hair, we'll say, start with that. That's a bit tricky to show because usually I'm doing this on my lap. And you go into the head, and then you don't want to let go of the other hair. But and there we go. She has her first plug. And also, when I do a reroot, I paint the scalp to start with because I like the hair to match the scalp. And if you're styling the hair, it's not going to look like it's got the wrong color or bald spots. But I do also, I paint some dolls further up than their original hairline. It completely depends on what I'm creating. And then I also get like, it's like a sharp little, like a needle, and I put a hole in first, and then I put the reroot tool in for the new hairline. I mean, that's optional.
Why do you do that, Rachel? What's the reason?
It just gives a nicer, like it gives a nicer result if a doll has a very high up hairline. So for example, this Pizzazz up here, I won't bring it down just in case I knock her over. Pizzazzes always sort of have like, because their hair sort of sticks up, their hairline's like a little bit further back. And so if you want, depending on the style, if you want to sort of like, you know, flowing over, you might want the hairline to be a bit further in. And also, yeah, it just depends. It just changes the look of it. So for example, I'm really into the Darcy dolls and sort of turning them into gem dolls. Now this one, I haven't painted her yet, but Darcy dolls had a very further back hairline that didn't sort of go down over the ear. So usually with Darcy dolls, I give them a whole new hairline, and that way it gives it more of gem look as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're just a couple of tips because it can change the look of the face as well.
Yeah, like with drag or with anybody, with anything, right? You put the hairline back or forward, it makes a whole different shape, right?
Exactly, yes. So that's a couple of tips there. And I'll show one more plug going into this head, and then I guess we'll do questions after that.
People want to understand how these plugs stay in when you put them in. Is it just the force of the vinyl? Yeah.
Well, once they're all in, what I do is get glue and poke it down into the neck and get like a cotton tip, a Q-tip, and then I move it around so that the glue on the inside holds the hair to the scalp. Now, generally, it's pretty good. And also, if you get like a really, really huge plug on the head, I skip that one. So that way you haven't got like a loose hair plug floating around in there and then it's all going to come out. So,
right. And
like anything, sort of as you get going, you figure out how thick it needs to be. If you go too thin, then it's not going to stay. So I'm just going to do one more plug just to show this. So that's your hair on there. Shine. No, it's not going to stay for me. Usually I'm doing this sort of with a little table. So, all right, let's try again. It's getting tight. Okay. Okay. Into the hole. And it's amazing how as you pull it out, usually the hair stays in there. And like anything, practice makes perfect. And there we go.
amazing. You put it in a certain direction so it sticks out in that way. You must have a skill for that, right?
Oh, what was that?
the way you stick it in is the way it sticks out, right? Kind of like you want to have that.
Particular, I think it just sort of, before it's all finished, the hair tends to sort of have that look when you're putting the hair in.
Okay.
And then if you style it, it all sort of sits down. Yeah, it's funny how it does that.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's the basics of the things I wanted to show. And yeah, and also I would like to say that you've got to just give things a go. You just give it a try. The first reroute I ever did took me a year to finish, but I did a different method. And then once that one was finished, the next one was really quick. So it just shows you, like, you make a start on something, you think this is really hard, the more you do it, the easier it gets. So yeah.
It seems that you made it very fun too. You seem to have fun doing it, and it makes me think I could try it. It might be fun, because to me it seems like a big undertaking that I wouldn't like, but you're having so much fun, and I'm like, seems like it maybe could be fun and not annoying. So I think it's the attitude too, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yes. Oh, thank you. That's great.
I do want to put one more question out there that I saw in the chat a couple times about sealing the paint on the face, like in the matte sealers or glossy sealers and all of that. So what do you have to say about the sealing the makeup once you've done it?
Yes. So I'll just grab a doll as an example. So we are going to grab, this is a Astral that's based off the prototype, but I've put her in a reproduction prototype fashion because I have another Astral there. So, but I've only part curled her hair. She's going out on the town tonight. So anyway, so what I do, usually I do the whole sealing in a matte finish. I do that first. Then on the eyes, I will do a gloss coat. And when you're doing the gloss coat on the eyes, you want at least 2 gloss coats, because one will give you a few lines. It doesn't look like smooth, but by the time you do the second coat, it just has this like really nice glass look to it. Now, some people do prefer to do just matte over the eyes. I mean, it's totally, up to the person customizing, but I find that the gloss makes the eyes pop a bit more. And sometimes I'll do the lips in gloss, sometimes I'll do it in matte, and then I also do a mix where I'll mix the gloss with the matte sealer, and that way it sort of has like more of a satin finish. And getting the right sealers is tricky. So gloss sealers, you can use pretty much any brand, but matte sealer, for some reason, matte sealers they sort of go shiny after a while. For some reason, I do not know why. So I'm going to tell you my recommendation, I'm going to give a plug to my friend Melissa, who actually came shopping with me once to get this, and I'm using this ever since. And I think she's here today. Hi, Melissa. So this is the Mod Podge, and is the best matte sealer, and it lasts forever, and it's matte. It stays matte, but mix it with a little bit of water.
That's great advice. One other thing we saw in the chat was about undoing your thing. So if you've made a mistake and you want to undo the mistake, you're embellishing the video like you had, and you want to undo it later, you change your mind. Do you have to kind of start from scratch, or can you just get rid of the thing that you don't like?
Usually you can get rid of it. I use like cotton tips. I always have tissues on hand, but I do use just toothpicks. So, I mean, everyone knows what a toothpick looks like, but just get your basic toothpicks. And that way you can use the toothpick to sort of like scratch along the line. And you can also refine things by using them as well. So if something isn't looking perfect, you can kind of neaten it up a little bit. But yeah, that simple toothpicks are amazing. But because the acrylic paint, because it dries pretty quickly, but you can kind of like adjust it before it gets too dried. So it's pretty forgiving. Yeah.
Great. Some other, Allison's asking, what's the custom doll you've gotten the most requests for over the course of your doll creating career?
Hi, Ali. I think I've done a lot of Jem herself, but also I would choose to create gems. There's something about Jem that I could never, where is she? I can never get bored of. And maybe it's because she's the main character. I'm just gonna show her.
Oh, gorgeous. Yeah. I always loved your gems because they had the gem, like you could do the cartoon makeup that we all wanted, kind of that thing. You did it very well and you do it very well. And you have so many variations of Jem, which is great.
Yes. So for some reason, Jem has definitely been one of the most popular characters, but that's because I will create a gem and often put those up for sale. So I think people are like, oh yes, that's what I want. But definitely Astral and Regine have definitely been the high up there requested ones. And strangely enough, I have not had a lot of requests of Pizzazz. Like I've had Pizzazz, but in comparison to the other dolls, just not the same. So she needs a bit more attention.
Ankar's asking about the glue, the hair in, and does it make the head heavy, and does it keep you from boil perming it in the future?
I don't think so. I don't put way too much glue in. So, you know, like a fairly good dollop and you're assuming that it's getting all the plugs. But no, it doesn't seem to make it heavy, and it doesn't, I've never had it come out with the boil perms, and I've used a few different types of glue, but I do often use fabric glue. But you can also, apparently you can use Mod Podge for the gluing as well. It sort of works like a glue. So I have actually tried that as recently and I've had really good results. So yeah, it doesn't seem to be a problem, but occasionally you get like, do a lot of plugs in a doll's hair and you're curling the hair and all of a sudden it's sort of like, it does have a bit of a weight to it. And especially if it's like a rock and curl gem that doesn't sort of sit perfectly on the body, she can get a bit of that bobblehead, you know.
We're over time, but if you have a few more minutes to stay with us, we can keep it
Oh,
open.
absolutely.
Great. Nicola, anything you want to add, and just anything you learned today that that you're going to apply in your practice as far as your customizations?
I've been making notes. I think the sort of backstitching on stopping the seams coming apart on clothes is something I struggle with. There was a question actually in the chat quite a while ago that was quite good about finding sort of either screen accurate or prototype accurate fabrics. You know, I mean, I get mine custom printed, but I don't know if there's anyone else out there that is doing things or if it's just trial and error and finding things.
Well, I do a lot of hand painting. I've had some custom printed ones that I've had done, and also people have given to me, which is amazing. So I would like to spend more time doing custom printed ones, but I find for me, because I like painting, I find it quicker to get the base fabrics that I want and then I paint the design on. But I mean, that takes time, but I kind of like that hand painted look. And when I'm hand painting onto a fabric, you use what's called a fabric medium, which is just I may as well show it while I'm here, or it's textile medium as well. And it's just this kind of, it looks like sealer. And you mix that in with the paint as you're painting it. And that means if you needed to wash the fabric, it will stay put and it won't crack. And also another tip is you can iron the fabric after you've painted, obviously from the wrong side of the fabric. So it really sets the design in. So there's different ways of doing things. But I mean, yeah, there's some amazing ways that people get custom printed fabrics done. So if they have the time to design them, do it. But getting gem fabrics, there's a lot of lycras that stores will have. And I think there's a lot that you can do with your basic lycra colors. So I always keep lycras on hand. And then I used to get a lot of the lame fabrics, but as I did the little skirt here before, as time's gotten on, I've got more interested in these. It's like a dotted sort of lame spandexy lycra fabric. It lasts longer than the lame because, as some of us will know, lame tends to deteriorate over time. So I've kind of moved a bit more onto this sort of fabric. And it's not exactly the same, but it gives that gem effect. So, you know, it does the same sort of thing. But every now and then when I'm fabric shopping, I will find exact gem fabrics. And there'll be just random little stores. And it's like, I've never seen this anywhere. So like the getting down to business skirt, it's got like the white skirt's got a slight texture on the skirt. There was this store years ago and I got a big chunk of that. And I was like, it's exactly the same. Like, and like the gold tinsely fabric to putting it all together. I found that in a store, couldn't believe it. I was almost dancing when I discovered it. So you just got to look around. And then also like fire and ice, the detail in the lace. There was a store that had about 10 different colors of that. And then they said, oh, this is the end of the line. This fabric's been going on for years. And I bought a heap of different colors and, you know, just keep it aside. But I think you can recreate a lot of things. So like, for example, and also you can always put your own spin on things. So for example, here, this is Riot, the lovely Riot. So his pants are just like a sort of like velour-y sort of fabric. And I've made a few different versions out of different fabric, but it still gives the same effect. You know, that's Riot's pants, it works. And see on the jacket, back when we didn't have Gem on DVD, I had like terrible VHS tapes to watch that were taped off tapes off tapes. And I thought that this fabric was like a gold color, like this triangle detail. And because I've been making it with gold for so many years, I don't like the red. I want it to be gold. So it works. Like, and some people don't even notice. They're like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's different. And also like his eyes, I used to not be able to tell if his eyes were brown or green. So when I paint Riot, I often do his eyes green in the middle. It's probably hard to see, but he's got brown outline around the eyes. So it's sort of a tip, to me, it's like a tip of the hat to how I saw Riot before we had good quality DVDs and before I realized there was red on the outfit, but it works. Like you wouldn't even notice that till I pointed it out. And like gold, like it just works. It looks perfect. And it looks good with glitter and gold gems. So I would say like, once you kind of get going with your customizing project, you can put your own spin on things and, you know, makes the character, it works. So yeah.
I want to get to a couple more questions, but people are curious about your outfit, Rachael, what earrings you're wearing and what jacket you're wearing. And then I'll come to Liz and then I'll come to Steve. So these are your Gemstar earrings?
Well, I was going to do gem stars, but I thought the misfits, you know, with the lightning bolts, they need a little bit of representation. And I've got my sparkly jacket, which I've had nowhere to wear yet. And I've got a gem t-shirt and a gem necklace that I got from I think it was Shavana gave me this GemCon 2008. I love it. I've worn this so much. That's awesome.
Thank you for that. Liz, do you want to ask your question?
There we go. Rachael, it is so good to see you. It has been.
Hi, Liz. Oh, it's great to see you. How are you?
I'm really good. And I just wanted to, I don't really have a question. I just wanted to show you this.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent.
The 2005 fashion, and Rachael made this and mailed them all in these packages from Australia, and then she came to GemCon 2005. So she is just, we love Rachael. So it's so good to see you, and I just love all my stuff that you have made me over the years. So.
Oh, thank you, Liz. Thanks for showing that. Oh, it's wonderful.
That's great. Yeah, we and I think you have 100 other things you could show us next year. So maybe we'll have you back next year, and you'll have a place to wear that jacket in person. Yeah, right. Because I know for a fact from your talk with my husband beforehand, you can talk about going to the resin shops, why you made these gem customs in the first place, all that stuff. So I love to hear about that stuff too. But yeah, apparently in the gem world, but in the GemCon world specifically, you're a legend. So we are so lucky to have had you this time at GemCon. So Steve, let me ask you. Yeah, of course. I was verklempt when we talked the first time because you're so famous to me, you know, in that way. So yeah, Steve, what's your question?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
I would just want to ask Rachel if when you have a free moment, do you mind doing another video of your doll room? Wasn't the last one 2017?
Oh yes. There's another one I've put up since. I should do a new link of it, so I'll definitely put that on Instagram. Definitely.
Thanks. But others will be interested.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for asking that. Davide has come in at the 11th hour with another question. Come on.
I'll be fast, even though it's slightly off topic, but I want, people to know that, Rachel is also great. Hi, Rachel.
Hi,
She's
Tony,
great also,
how
in pretty well. In, molding and, making actual props. And even though we haven't been talking about integrity dolls, like I want to show, I don't know how you can see, this is actually like a glitter and gold custom drumstick for Integrity Raya, or Shayna, if you will. So also for integrity collectors, if there are any here, just want you to know that Rachel can really help you in getting all this custom made stuff that looks exactly just like factory made. Like she's so amazing even in these little small details. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. I'll have to
Thank you.
quickly show you this one, Davide. It's based off the one that you sent, so I made.
That's great. You made one for that. They work for Hasbro dolls as well. That's perfect. That's great.
They absolutely do. Oh, they're so good.
And Rachel, before we let you go, is there a place we should find you if we want to reach out to you to order custom dolls from you? Are you still doing that? Do you kind of take requests that way and fashions and all that? What's the best place to find you?
Okay, I sometimes do. There's different things going on when I can and can't take orders, but I love people to check out my website and check out my Instagram, and send a message here and there. It's really fun because to me, Gem it's not just about the show and the dolls, it's the experience with people. Like I haven't even had a chance to even see all the people that are online today, but I've seen a few names at the start, and I'm so excited you guys are all here watching. And some people I've met in person, some people I've met on the magic of the internet, and it just means so much. That's what Gem is about. So thanks for being here, everybody, everyone. I'm talking to you.
Thank you. What's your Instagram handle, Rachel?
So my Instagram is JemGirl Creations.
Great.
And my website is just jemgirl.com.
Still going strong after all these years. You've managed to keep the domain name and everything. That's awesome.
Yes.
Okay, I think with that, we're gonna go. We have our cosplay contest starting in 15 minutes, so we'd love to see you there if you have time, Rachel. But thank you again. Thank you, Nicola, for being such an awesome host and moderator for this session. And yeah, we'll see everyone in about 15 minutes who's joining for the cosplay. Feel free to come off mute and say goodbye to Rachel.
Outrageous.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Signed out. Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do that really quick.
Meow. Can I just be meowing? Meow, 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 meow.
Meow, meow. Meow, 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 meow. Meow.
It's me,
Show us what we
Alana.
get
I'm
to do.
meowing.
Meow, 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 meow.
If anyone would like to join me in meowing, please, now's the time.
What is the Meow Mix interlude?
Meow, 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 meow.
meow, 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 meow.
Meow, meow, meow.
This is times